Okay, so if we had a reality TV camera, like a reality TV crew following you along as you do your work, like the office style, right? I'm wondering, for how many of you, how many of that camera would pick up conversations where you're saying, where you're talking to each other, and you're looking at the data, and you're saying things like, man, like we're just relying on fewer and fewer donors to do more of the giving. List rentals, it's just not what they used to be, and like, why is cost of acquisition so high? Has anybody had those conversations in your shops? All right, everyone. It is true, like we are actually relying on fewer donors to do more of the giving. This is CRA data. What you're seeing in the bottom curve here, that's the number of Canadians who are actually filing a gift to charity when they're doing their taxes. Of course, in Canada, every single dollar that you do file is beneficial to you. And then the top line is the average gift amount that Canadians are filing. So over the years, fewer and fewer Canadians who are giving more and more and more. And maybe you say, okay, that just makes sense. That's just kind of how like the way society is going. That's the way wealth is distributed among people. It's just like fewer people have more to give. But we now have data for the very first time. We have a massive study that came out about a year ago that actually interviewed Canadian donors. It's a broad-scale qualitative study talking to the people who actually give. And what we are seeing is that generosity as a whole, we're not just making this up, it is actually declining across the board. Self-reported by Canadians. Now, some of us hold on to hope and we say, yeah, but you know what's happening is people are just not giving to charities. They're still super generous, maybe more generous than ever before. Like they're giving to people like individuals that need it, like directly. They're buying, like they're paying for Airbnbs for people during the Ukraine war. They're doing all sorts of other less reported forms of generosity. But what the study found is that that's not the case. That is all happening, but it's also the same people who are making the reported forms of like they're making gifts that are the reported forms of generosity. It's the same group of people. The same people who are making gifts to charities are also being generous in other ways that are self-reported. But those are not two separate groups. Now, I'm not saying this to be hopeless at all. I'm just saying this because like we have an opportunity here and we have to do something about it. So we all got to get together, put our heads together, and figure out what we can do about it. Now, the great news is that 88% of Canadians actually say generosity matters. And if you read the report, they understand why the charitable sector, what the charitable sector is doing. They understand why it's important that they're plugging some of the gaps that government is not able to plug. It's not like they don't think charity matters. Most Canadians think charities are super important and that being a generous person and giving to charity matters. So surely it must be the fact that they don't trust charities to do the job. Because if they believe generosity matters, but they're not giving, surely they're thinking, well, my generosity isn't actually going to trustworthy institutions. Well, it's not quite true. 81% say, I actually trust the charities that I've heard of. Okay, so they think generosity matters. They trust the charities that they've heard of. Surely, we're just not asking enough, right? Like, we just need to give them more opportunities because McDonald's is asking for their money every day, Walmart is asking for their money every day, Amazon is asking for their money like every time you log into Prime. Well, actually, 83 say, I'm cool, I encounter frequent reminders to give. If I want to give, I can give, okay? Okay, so, generosity matters. They trust the charities they've heard of. They're prompted enough times. They know they need my money. They're asking me all the time. I'm well aware. Probably giving isn't super easy, right? Otherwise they would do it more. There must be just a ton of friction. Well, 93% actually say, well, I think it's pretty easy to give. Now we know, I run a fundraising growth agency, we know from testing that there's lots of friction, and we'll get into that. But Canadians, that's not the perception. That's not what's keeping them from giving. They actually think giving is super easy. Okay, so generosity matters, trust charities I've heard of, I'm prompted frequently to give, and I think giving is super easy. Okay, then it must be, there's only one thing left. If everything else fails in fundraising, we blame the economy. All right, that is sort of true. That's sort of true. Right? 50% of people say, I could afford to give more. The rest can't. that still leaves a pretty big contingent that could give more. Now, at Doku, our mission is to make generosity the social norm again. We're a fundraising growth agency, we generate mail, we do digital, we do all of those things. All the things that you would think an agency could help you with to grow your fundraising. But we are super concerned about the fact that generosity is no longer the social norm. People aren't growing up with parents writing checks at the kitchen table. I had a moment of conviction a few months ago where I realized, I sat down with my wife and I was like, I don't think my kids have seen me make a donation. And we give. We're monthly donors, and it comes off the credit card silently the 15th of every month in the middle of the night. My parents and my children have never seen me write a check to anybody. They don't know that I'm a generous person or that we give money. It just all happens automatically. Now here's the problem. Canadians who feel connected to others actually are more generous than those who are not. So maybe part of the generosity, I don't want to call it a crisis, but maybe part of this, like, the motivation that's not quite there is because we actually have a connection crisis. We're not as connected as a society or as a community, that the fabric isn't where that it used to be. So then, what can we do about it? Well, we are now designing fundraising. For the last 3 years we've been doing that, based on something called self-determination theory. Self-determination theory comes from psychology. It's the most studied sort of psychological framework, and it basically means that humans have 3 core emotional human needs that we need met. And fundraising can actually help meet those emotional needs. Fundraising can be about helping our donors meet emotional needs without perpetuating harmful stereotypes. The first need is autonomy, which is we all want to feel free, like it's my choice to give. That's why guilt-based fundraising works the first time you do it, and then afterward it doesn't work anymore, right? Give now, or this dog is going to die today. It's going to get shot. Like, oh, okay. But then it actually depresses our sense of autonomy because we felt like we were guilted into this thing. We didn't feel like we woke up that morning wanting to make that gift. Competence. I feel capable and effective. I'm a capable person. The money that I give, the gifts that I do, they actually do something meaningful, and I made a smart choice to give to this organization. But that would require us to remind donors of their competence. And then relatedness. I feel connected to others. It's not just me. I'm part of something bigger. Even the most individualistic people among us, even the ones on any issue, even the edges, like people who are like really out there, even those people have a small crew of people they want to relate to. Even if it's like, I'm like you, you're like me, we're different than other people together. Right? All of us have a need for connection. Some of us have this need a lot more than others. But I think, I want to posit to you today, that the future of generosity depends on how connected we can make people feel to their giving. So, we set out to kind of put this to the test. What does it feel like to be generous in Canada? So we made gifts. We made gifts to 120 charities. These are not all their logos. I'm just not good at PowerPoint. These are the ones that I could fit in. 120 people, 120 organizations, we made a gift. A first-time gift, created a new profile, of $50 online. And then we tracked everything that came after that. We tracked everything that came in the first 90 days, which is some mail, lots of emails, a decent amount of phone calls, some voicemails. We also tracked everything for the next year. And I want to walk you through 3 sort of very high-level key findings. Now, I'm happy to, if your organization may have been in a study, happy to walk some of you through your individual results. LinkedIn, find me, or email me later. I can tell you if your organization was in a study. And if it was, I'm happy to set up a call and walk you through specifically how your organization ranked in here. But high level, there's a lot of emotional distance between the actual act of giving and somebody feeling a sense of belonging. So number 1 is we're not actually encouraging generosity at the actual moment of giving, right? We always say, retention begins at acquisition. So when we score the actual words, by the way, in a donation, the only thing you can control is the words, right? They create meaning, they create belonging. That's what we have in that moment. When we scored the copy, most nonprofits had actually were very credible. So when you think of competence, it didn't really inspire a whole lot of competence. 74% of giving pages had no trust markers. Trust markers are things like testimonials, reviews, third-party badges, anything like that, credibility seals. If I'm a first-time donor, I do want to feel some level of competence, that my gift is going to something pretty real. Why does that matter? Because the social norm matters. The study found that the higher the perception that others around me are giving, the more likely I am to give. So we need to remind other Canadians to celebrate generosity, say, hey, this is actually a good thing. Others are doing it. We're all like, look at all these people doing this. Be part of it. This is a client example. This is not perfect execution, right? It's not perfect execution because clearly the pictures are stock pictures. Clearly the names are fake. This is better than nothing, but I would say we can do better than this. In this case, the client, for different reasons, didn't want to, but you can. Like real donor testimonials. This is an Engaging Networks page, UNHCR, shout out, they presented before. They're including donor testimonials, even just in the copy. I like this example. This guy, Josh from Michigan, super happy to give. He's given 95 times because he's a monthly donor. Okay. Now, 93% of gift arrays didn't have a clear and tangible outcome. And I want to be clear, you can have a clear and tangible outcome on your gift strings and it being completely 100% unrestricted funding. I'm not saying you should restrict your funding at the time of checkout, but help somebody, especially a first-time donor to your website, which tends to be a lower donor, help them, give them something, help them see that they're actually doing something part. If I'm a donor and the world is on fire, what is my $100 going to do? It feels so meaningless sometimes, but it's not. So paint that picture. Another example from UNHCR, right? And by the way, this is completely unrestricted language. I'll show you, MSF is in the room. This is unrestricted language. This is number one, critical humanitarian assistance with an unrestricted gift now. Okay, so super clear at the bottom here. And then even for the gift array, $175 can provide a thermal blanket. It can do something like this. You're not saying it's going to do this specific thing. It's just a symbolic amount of what it could do. Okay, monthly giving is one of the highest forms of belonging that you can call a donor into. It's also great for your business model, but it's also good for donors. And there's a rising number of donors who want to give this way. 90% of organizations actually had an option to become a monthly donor, which is great. 80% of them gave no unique reason why. And that's not hard. That you are asking somebody to commit to something, making a monthly gift. It's the difference between me saying, going to a friend, hey, can I borrow $500? Or saying, can I borrow $500? I'm not getting paid until Friday. My car's brakes broke, I need to take it to the shop. The moment you give a reason for why you may be asking for support, other people are that much more likely to want to support you because you're inviting them into the story. So give them a reason for why monthly giving might be something they'll want to consider, right? As a monthly donor, here's some of the things that you're going to make happen. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's just changing the words you use. And changing the words you use is completely free. It costs you nothing. Here's another client example. Unrestricted, here's what your monthly support can do, right? Using identity language, becoming a freedom partner. Again, monthly gifts are the most efficient way to donate. That is a reason why to become a monthly donor. Probably can workshop the value proposition a little bit, but that is a reason for why, right? That counts. 12% allow donors to make a gift via direct deposit or bank payment. Do you know these are the stickiest gifts you can possibly get? When you compare the churn on monthly credit card donations versus automatic bank payments, I know this is a little bit more work. These are the stickiest gifts that you can get. They don't churn nearly as often. And now the tools are in place where it's also not that hard to facilitate this anymore. This was a shocker. 46% of donations clearly thank the donor for their gift. This was what we found the most forgotten copy in the entire process, is the confirmation page. A good amount of them had the stock language from whatever tool they were using. Some of them said, here's your order number, thank you for your order. Right? If you want a transactional donor, treat them like a transactional donor. If you want to bring somebody into the fold and welcome them, then bring them into the fold and welcome them. 35% set an expectation about what happens next. Here's what you can expect. Thank you for your gift. Here's what you can expect that's going to happen next. This is a great example of thank you for your donation, right? Smiling, happy kids. You've just done something incredible by choosing to donate. You're helping do this. You're championing the children's rights. Here's what's next, right? On the way to your inbox. Number 2 is we are not listening to, we're not learning from our donors. How many organizations do you think asked us for any feedback during the giving experience, either about the giving experience or anything else related to info that we could give an organization? Just shout it out.
0.
0. 6. Yeah, not bad. 3 out of 120. Right? Now, I want to take a quick break here. This will matter a lot more going forward. Zero-party data, which is stuff donors tell you, is going to be so important for all of us going forward. It won't be long before any of the CRMs we're using are just going to have a chat window that looks like ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, and we're going to be able to ask questions of our CRM, of our donor files. And the only thing it can go on is what's in there, right? Before, the reason people didn't want to gather this is because it was messy, qualitative data. And if I'm reading 200 donor comments, I'm probably going to over-index on the worst one that I read, or the last one that I read. It's going to be hard for me to do any kind of sentiment analysis for them, right? That's no longer the case with AI. Any data that we ourselves as organizations own, number 1 means we don't have to rent that data from third-party providers. We get to actually own our own data. Number 2 is, we actually will, in the future, it'll become easier to know our donors, learn from them, and use some of these tools to get that information, right? So start asking for messy qualitative data. Why did you choose to give? What prompted you to give? You can rate the donation experience. We sometimes rate, we score sometimes autonomy, competence, and relatedness. You can ask questions around those. And then we can close that loop. If somebody felt like the decision to give wasn't theirs as much, we can be like, okay, we need to make a change with our coffee because clearly we're guilting people into doing this, and we can follow up with that person. Okay, now I get it. Gift forms, they're kind of you kind of set into this thing. Some of them have templates. You can't do the feedback thing. Okay, how many asked us for any kind of feedback in the first 90 days? Anything, even an email saying thank you, hit reply and let me know why you made a gift. It's about 15%, so not bad, right? Quite a bit better. 50% of orgs showed any interest in a new donor in the first 90 days. Now, we're not welcoming well and connecting donors to their identities and values. Some of them, I'm going to show this is a positive example, right? Immediately, donor survey. We want to get to know you. Nicely done. Kids helpful. Nice welcome. We did get a lot of urgent reminders. We did get some mid-level packs, which was interesting because it was a $50 gift. So that's maybe speaks more to data hygiene. Of course, we got the address labels. And we got I Love Canada bag, made in China. 38% of 120 organizations. I'm so sorry if you sent me that back. I did not mean to. 38% of organizations, 38 out of 120, sorry, sent any kind of welcome email series, right? Any kind of happy to have you here, welcome here, let me get you onboarded. 15 sent the new donor welcome packet. Everybody else basically just put us into their normal stream, which was mostly asking for more money. This is a positive example. They tried so hard to make this nice and personalized, right? They crossed out my last name. and they wrote in my first name, Dear Mick. Effort counts. Effort counts. 33 actually in their first communication actually celebrated us as a first-time donor. Called out the fact, you're new here. Thank you. 37% went straight for the second gift ask right away, without anything else. And so my parting challenge for you is, what if we focus, this is dovetailing on Maria, like what if we focus on connection first over retention, right? Retention will follow. We have a framework called the Fundraising Flywheel. We start by listening and engaging donors before, and celebrating the generosity, reporting back before we earn the right to ask again. It isn't right that you get to earn, right? You have to help people understand that they have autonomy, they have competence, and that they're connected with the organization and you care about those emotional needs. So this is typically how we run the first 20 days. I'm happy to offline talk to you about this, talk to you about some of the data about this. If you've been told you have to ask for a second gift immediately, otherwise you're going to lose the donor forever, I just think you should challenge that, and you can A/B test this, right? It's not that hard. Test this treatment, but start by listening to donors, start by celebrating the generosity, reporting back, and earning the right to ask again. If we want the revenue curve to look like this, what if we just focus on making the donor experience curve look like that? That's it for me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.